Welcome back to Iraq, everybody. You know, the latest Rasmussen Reports poll, that's one of those presidential polls that's ahead of the Iowa caucuses, had some shocking news. Long-shot candidate Mike Huckabee, the Arkansas governor, now has the lead in Iowa. He's ahead of the former leader Mitt Romney, 28 to 25%. And the governor has been kind enough to join us from a campaign stop in New Hampshire, where he also has surprising momentum. Governor, considering your candidacy is being run on a relative shoestring, and you know, my brother Craig and I both think that it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Thank you for being with me. What do you figure is going on in this presidential race? Why this swing toward you?
You know something, it's been pretty amazing, Geraldo, that the campaign has just caught fire. And we now got news that today Rasmussen has a second place nationally. We got American Research poll that we're third place in New Hampshire. We're surprising a lot of people, but I don't think we're that surprised in the campaign, because we really believe that once the American people started focusing on a message, they really wanted a president who would be president of the people, not just president of the pundits, not president necessarily of Wall Street, but of Main Street, and it's happening. And it really kind of is an affirmation that in this country, you can't buy the presidency. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and hopefully people are celebrating that.
You know, we always dug you because even though I didn't agree with some of your politics, some I do, some I don't, you always had the same politics. You know, you haven't been, this today and that tomorrow. But here's the question I have for you. I'm surrounded by young GIs who've been serving our country here in Iraq. I want to know your feeling about the surge. I want to know your feeling, and what would your policy be vis-a-vis these GIs and this war-torn country, Governor?
I'm extremely proud of those men and women who are there. I visited them about a year and a half ago. I've never seen a military better trained, better equipped, better prepared, more committed to their mission. And Geraldo, the surge is working. The reason you don't hear a whole lot of people complaining about the war is because those who wanted us to lose realized that something happened. We started winning it. And we're winning it because of the dedication of those guys that you're standing there with. And the reality is there's two things we've got to do. One is to win, and one is to win with honor. If we don't do that, two things happen. We lose not just a military issue, but we create a vacuum into which terrorists and other nations that would love the resources of Iraq will fill. The second thing, we will demoralize that great military that you're standing with, and it'll take more than a generation for them to get that morale back. We can't afford either of those consequences, and that's why I'm very proud of General Petraeus, exceptionally proud of those men and women who are over there fighting, and we've got to make sure they've got everything they need to get the mission done.
You know, if you get the nomination, you should think of General Petraeus maybe as the vice presidential candidate, and that's not a joke, but I don't want to talk about that.
No, it's not a joke.
You mentioned we can't I know it's not a joke. He's a top-flight guy. Man, I'd vote for him. But you have a situation, you said, we can't afford to let the terrorists take over. Afford. Money is a weapon. We've been spending a fortune to rebuild Iraq. The American taxpayer is now subsidizing. I showed the zoo is open. That's because of American taxpayer dollars. The hospital is open. That's because of us. And you go down the list, the reason the streets are being cleaned, the reason, they're planting and repaving and all the rest of it is the American tax dollars. How much can we afford? I know we have to keep the terrorists out, but how much can we afford to build this nation, Governor?
Well, at some point, Iraq's going to have to take the responsibility for rebuilding their country. They've got oil money. They have fertile soil. They have rich resources. They've got an educated population. It's much different in Iraq than in Afghanistan, which is far more primitive and much more difficult to see a significant economy develop anytime soon. So the good news is that with stability and with some peace, Iraq can become a very prosperous nation and take care of itself. And that ought to be the goal of the United States. Help it to become stable, make sure that the political side starts working, and then we need to get the heck out of there and let them have their country and hopefully get prosperous, and they have the capacity for that, and then Americans won't have to foot that bill.
Should they pay us back?
I think at some point, if they continue to have, let's say, oil revenues, the likes of which they have the potential of, but by the same token, what we have to do as Americans is get off oil altogether. It's time that we tell the Saudis at some point that we don't need their oil any more than we need their sand, And that if you think about it, Geraldo, our threat in Iran right now is largely because they have oil money to finance a nuclear reactor. They couldn't build a nuclear reactor if the only thing they could fund it with was rugs. So part of what we have to do from a national security standpoint is to completely change the economy of the world by getting off of our dependence in this country on oil, and that'll make the whole Middle Eastern situation quite different.
Governor, our best wishes to you. You know, you're a straight shooter, and I appreciate that. So thanks a lot for being with me.